We finished with the business cases, and here there's also some interesting interactive content, like creating various games and quizzes. Yes, these can be HTML games that open right in the browser, but it can also just be a story, one with plot twists, for example, different endings, and depending on your choices, the character develops differently. The plot changes in various ways, and you can even include moral dilemmas. Yes, so it created a story for us. Yeah, so, well, this is basically a whole game for us. Now I'll open it as HTML, that'll be more convenient. So it's an interactive story about AI and creativity. Yes, we have Maya Chen making some choices. I won't read this for too long. Here it tells her story and she has to make a choice. Yes, and here it's immediately highlighted for us, but it's very hard to see what she has to choose. And here the colors are different. Yes, red. Then pragmatic. No, that's orange. Yes. There are two green options that I can't read, and there's deceptive. So she, yes, she outsources the work to freelancers and says that she did it herself. Got it? And we choose an option, yes, and move on. So here we'll be getting different metrics. Yes, you see her ethics. If she makes the wrong decisions, then her ethics will drop, and so on. And her income can also decrease, or her reputation can increase, yes, and her creativity can also grow. So this is our character development. And here there are 5 choices that lead to a specific outcome. So it's a finished game. Sometimes they don't work after Claude writes them, so you need to ask him to fix it. But well, let's say it's 50-50, these interactive tests do end up running. The next use case is creating browser games. What do I mean by that? You can create any test, even a game, that will run in your browser just from a simple prompt. For example, right now we'll make a typing speed test together. How fast can you type, right? This is what it looks like. And here is where the development of our game begins. So this is what our game looks like. We can even try it out. Okay, so what we can do now is save this as an HTML file, and then we can proceed to open it in the browser to actually see it all in action. So here we have it. Yes, we can change the text. Yes, everything looks good. Now let's see if it works. We click on Start Text. Yes, you see, this is word per minute. These are words per minute, 22 words per minute. Did I type everything correctly? I was correcting yes. How much time do I have left? What does 2 mean? 2 seconds, probably. How many characters did I type? That's the game. We just wrote it together, right? And I can, for example, take this HTML and send it to my friends and they can test it too. Or you can deploy it to a website. Well, this is a very simple example, but you got the idea? And this is what Claude wrote. I don't know how to code. I'm a designer, a creator, yes, an AI creator, but I'm definitely not a coder and I don't know how to program. I honestly have no idea what it's writing here. But as you can see, everything works. This could be a more complex game, but of course, the more complex a browser game you ask for, the higher the chance there will be some bugs, and sometimes it just doesn't work. When that happens, well, again, you can always ask Claude to rewrite something or make changes, especially if you're using the paid versions. Yes, you have more access to work with it. Yes, and there are many similar options here. Yes, absolutely. You can create a detailed personality test that is specifically designed for your particular niche. Furthermore, you can write an engaging scenario that is specifically for the purpose of developing a certain important skill. And yes, it is also possible to create a fully interactive tutorial builder for guiding users through a specific process. You can create a game with key questions from our industry. You can make a text-based simulator. You can create an interactive case study, studying a specific case, but in an interactive format. All of this will be in HTML files. Yes, you can create a gamified curriculum specifically for a subject. Well, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be AI. For example, it could be a case for math teachers. And creating a gamified learning plan is always something interesting. And it's free and easy to make and launch in HTML. You can create a game that solves some kind of puzzle. Yes, a virtual quest or escape room where you have to get out. And again, it depends on the decisions you make. The decision trees mentioned earlier can be turned into a game. This will definitely work much better in a team, for sure. This is what you could call a very primitive form of vibe coding. Actually, it's not even vibe coding, because this can be done by people who don't know how to code at all, just by following instructions. Yes, but this could be a very interesting case, which you don't even necessarily have to put on a website. You can just open the HTML file and work in it without publishing it anywhere. In the same way, you can create an interactive storytelling workshop, a planning game, or a character development simulator that's also interactive and depends on the character's decisions, just like Maya did in our first example. Yes, you can create an interactive debate moderator. These are very interesting cases. And actually, this is my favorite part, when Claude writes tests. Yes, for analytics and research, again, we can take information and turn it into an interesting story, a narration, or a tale. We can create a questionnaire, yes, combine it, for example, with the previous points and make a questionnaire with the main 20 questions that interest us. Again, customer development interviews. Conduct them with clients and determine what questions we should ask them to make it effective for us. We can analyze existing trends and try to predict what will be trending next. In order to catch these trends, we can conduct interviews with users. Yes, here we upload our, for example, transcription and turn it into insights. From this, we can create a customer journey map, identify pain points, see what can be improved, and provide recommendations. Again, create a framework for our specific market. For what you are researching, gather this analytics with recommendations and analyze the information on the market. Here you can provide your information about your niche, your competitors, everything you have, and receive insights into opportunities and parts of the niche that are not yet occupied, opportunities that you have not yet taken advantage of. These always exist in every niche, even in the very crowded and very large ones. Yes, and again, it's very convenient to do this with neural networks, because when a person does it, even an experienced employee, it takes much more time. Yes, and of course, to analyze reviews, to create a hypothesis generator that can then be tested. To create a case study example for your industry, yes, to analyze it. To create a methodology for conducting research in your niche, actually, yes. A guide to information visualization. For example, if you have a huge data set, you can ask the neural network to recommend how best to visualize this information. That is, to create some charts. Maybe a certain color scheme would work better. In other words, get advice on how to best present this information to the public. Maybe you have a presentation, or maybe you're showing your boss some metrics for the past 6 months and you need to know how to present it more clearly and effectively so that it's understandable and, let's say, looks good. You can create, for example, an A/B test architecture. You can take information about your user's behavior and again interpret it into specific points to understand what motivates the user, why something isn't working as it should somewhere, and what to improve, as well as which improvements should be prioritized. Again, you can conduct in-depth market analysis using various sources, create predictive models for your business goal, and develop a creative brief for the project. Yes, you can hold a brainstorming session and create detailed stories for specific personas. There may be several of them in a given context. Each one should have their own personality arc, and so on. For example, whether you're making a series, a set of videos, a film, or even writing a book, no matter what you're working on, it's very convenient to create such a document for yourself right away, where you outline how your character develops. A slightly different prompt, but a similar one, is the creation of entire worlds. Each world will have its own characteristics, its own economy, some kind of political system, history, and culture. So here we're actually inventing an entire world. This could be for a book, a game, a film, or anything else. A translator of visual concepts, right? We have a concept and it needs to be conveyed to the designers so they understand what they actually need to do next. So you take this concept and turn it into precise instructions for the designers on what they should do. Yes, we create creative frameworks, like a construction set for our project, immediately setting the limitations and challenges, and we try to influence creativity, how creatively we can work on this project, what can be deviated from and what cannot. We also create a style guide for the brand. In fact, this is the same brand book that used to take a very long time to develop. Now you can come in, generate a brand book, think it through, review it, make adjustments, and then hand it over to the designers. Yes, you can create a facilitator for creative collaboration to test who does what, assign roles, and outline some steps. We have already discussed with you what steps there are at each stage, what our pipeline is, what the workflow looks like, and the feedback protocols, and so on. Yes, to come up with mood boards for a specific project with recommendations, some connection to trends, advice on adaptation, and so on. From different sources, for example. This is already a request for research, a prompt for solving a specific creative problem and how it can be solved in 5 different ways. What results can there be? To look at a project from a new angle, for example, one that has stalled and isn't moving forward. A prompt that explains artistic techniques? Yes. It's a prompt that helps organize a portfolio. For example, there is a creative work, we describe it even in our own words, but we need to turn this into a detailed description of the work for the portfolio. What was done there, why it's so great, what the team did, and to get instructions to show which skills were applied and various guidelines for the presentation. This is something that always suffers. People don't like filling out portfolios, neither studios nor individual employees in any industry. This can also be very helpful. Design a methodology. A prompt that allows you to take feedback and turn it into concrete actions. Yes, again with prioritization. For example, a client wrote to us, but often the client doesn't give specific corrections. Of course, as executors, we often have the right to demand that the corrections be specific. But sometimes the client needs help, and so basically, we take feedback that isn't very clear, turn it into specific points for improvement, and we can go back to the client with it and ask if that's actually what they meant. Yes, and also adapting a specific concept through different creative mediums. These are forms of expression, in other words, they're mediums. It could be image generation, it could be a drawing, or even a photograph. For example, there's a specific concept and we want to bring it to life on a large creative scale. But it could also be, for example, a real painting and the creation of a clothing collection at the same time, all within one big concept. This is often used, for example, at exhibitions or in interactive shows, where a single concept can unite completely different elements and can bring together music, a separate painting, or even a sculpture. In other words, various creative industries, but all united by one concept. These are some examples of how it can be used. In fact, there could be many more, but these are just to help you understand how this works and how broadly any language model, including Claude, can be used to suit your needs. I used my own examples, but you can adapt this for yourself.